Last Gay Waiter on Castro Street, Part 10 of 12, 1984, The Third Catastrophe by William Peterson, presented by William Peterson. There was only one problem with my perfect London life with my perfect London boyfriend. When Frank drank, he drank heavily. And when he drank heavily, his personality changed and he became mean and self-pitying. I soon became the object of his anger. I was stupid, an American bumpkin, an airheaded blonde twink, a fool that would never be able to keep up with him intellectually. When it started, I couldn't imagine that this kind of verbal abuse was coming from this beautiful man. I'd wake up the next day and think, maybe it wasn't as bad as I had imagined. But over time, I began to feel that he was right. Maybe I wasn't very smart. Maybe I would always be a second rater. I mean, I was 27. What had I done? Worked in restaurants, quit the only professional job I'd ever had. I flipped from one thing to another, one city to another, chased dreams that didn't materialize. Maybe I really was the loser he told me I am when he was drunk. But still, there was a part of me that suspected that he was wrong. He had told me that his previous live-in boyfriend, an Irish guy by the name of Paddy, that he and Paddy had on many occasions resorted to fisticuffs, and that a number of times the neighbors had called the police who came and physically separated them. Now, I knew I was not a fighter. I knew that if this ever happened, I'd walk after the first punch was thrown. So one night, after a dinner party and heavy drinking on his part, after the guests had left our flat, and after a long self-pitying rant followed by a soul-destroying blast of verbal invective directed at me, he picked up a glass of red wine from the table and threw it in my direction. I wasn't drunk. My reflexes were good, so I dodged the glass. It smashed on the wall behind me, red wine running down the wallpaper. So I walked out the door. I don't remember where I walked or for how long, but I know that I ended up at my friend Sue's cafe. Sue was a former Rajneeshi, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh being the free love guru who was later kicked out of the US for tax evasion. She ran this sweet little cafe on Wandsworth Common. And by this time, she had already become my agony aunt. She took me home to her flat in Brixton, tucked me into bed in this little futon on the floor of her husband's study. And over the next 2 weeks, she fed me, held my hand, let me cry, dressed me up in her husband's leathers, and took me to Heaven, the most famous gay bar in the world. And in so doing, she saved my life. I have no idea what happened to Sue. I suspect she died of AIDS long ago because she became positive early. The morning after the catastrophe, I went back to our flat to collect my clothes. I left the key on the dining room table, which was crowded with last night's dishes and rotting food. When you're young and your heart is broken, you feel it's the end of everything. Frank had been so perfect, and our life together held such promise. I mean, we had even bought furniture together at Conrad's. I mean, oh, I couldn't imagine I'd ever love again. And as the eldest child of an alcoholic father and grandfather and great-grandfather, how could I have fallen in love with an alcoholic? I mean, surely there was something wrong with me. By the time of the third great catastrophe, my father had been sober for 7 years, and here I was repeating the patterns of codependency as if they were ingrained in my DNA. I was clearly the problem. I could never trust myself in love. I'd never love anyone again, not with the deep, complete kind of mind-body connection I had with my handsome and brilliant Frank, or so I felt at the time. Overwhelmed by feelings I couldn't sort out, I did what any reasonable 20-something would do. I fled. After Sue put me back together, I got on a plane and went home to Mom and Dad in Burnsville, Minnesota. And when I got home, I was sad and broken, and I couldn't tell anyone why. I wasn't out to my mother, fearing she'd be unable to cope. And though I had come out to my father years earlier at 21, I couldn't begin to talk with him about a relationship with another man, much less about it failing due to alcoholism. I had fallen for a younger version of my dad, calling Dr. Freud. So in 2001, after 2 decades, nearly 2 full decades without contact at all, I mustered up the courage to visit Frank in London. He had a long-term partner and had been shortly after I left his sorry drunken ass. On the ride back from Heathrow to his flat, he asked me if I could forgive him. I said I didn't know yet. 3 days later, I told him that I could and that I did. Apart from Frank, there is nothing left from that year of my life. No photos, not a thing. Frank and I met in London post-COVID, and we walked and talked for hours through Hyde Park. I told him that when I fell in love with him, I also fell in love with London. It was a package deal. I said it in this crazy, stupidly American way. It's so naive, but so honest. And I surprised myself with my honesty. And he just smiled. It's a miracle. It's a miracle, and against all odds, that we're both still here.